The Lives of the Saints by Father Alban Butler, December 15th, St. Paul of Latros. The father of this hermit, who was an officer in the imperial army, died in a battle against the Saracens. Paul's mother then left with her 2 sons from Pergamon, where our saint was born, for Bithynia. Basil, the elder of the 2 sons, took the habit in the monastery of Mount Olympus, but soon after, desiring greater solitude, he retired to Mount Latros, Latmos. After the death of his mother, Basil induced his brother to embrace the religious life. Although still very young, Paul had already experienced the vanity of the world and the dangers of living in it. Basil entrusted him to the Abbot of Caria to instruct him. Paul wanted to become a hermit to live in greater solitude and austerity, but his abbot, judging that he was still too young, would not let him leave while he lived. After the abbot's death, Paul settled in a cave on the summit of Mount Latros. For several weeks he fed only on green acorns, which at first did him much harm. 8 months later, his superiors sent him back to Caria. It is said that when he worked in the kitchen, the fire in the oven made him think so much of hell that he could not look at it without bursting into tears. When his superiors gave him permission to follow his vocation, the saint withdrew to the rockiest part of the mountain. During the first 3 years, he suffered violent temptations. From time to time, a peasant would bring him something to eat, but generally St. Paul fed on wild herbs. When the fame of his holiness spread throughout the province, some of his disciples went to join him and built a series of cells. The saint, who cared so little for his own body, took great care that nothing was lacking to those who lived under his direction. At the end of 12 years, he retired to another place on the mountain in search of greater solitude. From time to time, he went to visit his disciples to encourage them. Sometimes he accompanied them to the forest to sing the divine office in the open air. When they asked St. Paul why at certain times he was so joyful and at others so sad, he replied, "When nothing distracts me from God, my heart is filled with joy, so that I forget even to eat and other bodily needs. On the other hand, when I have distractions, I feel very low." Sometimes he spoke to his disciples of what passed between God and his soul, and of the extraordinary graces he received in contemplation. Desiring to find perfect solitude, the saint withdrew to the island of Samos and hid in a cave. But soon his refuge was discovered, and new disciples came to join him, so that he repopulated the Lauras that had been destroyed by the Saracens. The monks of Latros begged him to return to them, and he did so. Emperor Constantine Porphyrogenitus often wrote to him for advice, and more than once he had to repent for not having followed him. St. Paul was very concerned about the poor and used to take more of their food and clothing than was convenient to distribute among them. On one occasion, he tried to sell himself as a slave to help some people who were in great need, but his disciples prevented him from doing so. On December 6, 956, sensing that the hour of his death was approaching, he went down from his cell to the church, celebrated Mass earlier than usual, and then went to bed. The time he had left to live, he spent praying and giving instructions to his disciples. He died on December 15th. The Greeks commemorate him on that date. He is sometimes called St. Paul the Younger.